Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's your boy Carcino here, and let's have a conversation, a very civil conversation. As we grow older and as we go through the world, we don't remember certain times. Some people just don't recall or don't remember a time that didn't benefit or fit them as people. Such situations are very subjective to being distributed to the public. Like you've seen things that did not happen, or yeah. Hold on one second. Mm. Now, what we've seen is many people don't. We've seen a lot of people go through this thing where they're basically just shut off from what America is doing, or shut off mentally from what's happening around the world, and they become, basically they have desensitized themselves from everything you see materializing in front of them. Like, for instance, they'll be on their phone, they'll go, "Ooh, this is cute. That's a nice shirt." And scroll, "Oh, 15 dead. Oh, that's so sad." Go, "Oh, look at this. They got the concert coming to our house next week." They are so desensitized from everything that's going on around them that they don't pay attention to certain events that are going on around them. Like, everybody wants to see World War III. I'm like, y'all don't think you ready for World War III. A lot of people claim that they want that, but trust me, you don't want that. Well, when you have situations where you start seeing what they call retaliatory attack against Israel, there was a bombing in Iran that happened at the embassy that took the lives of some Iranian members. Iranians decided to attack immediately, sending over 200 plus drones to Israel. Now, they got to travel 700 miles. So it's going to take some time for those drones to reach Israel, which will give them plenty of time to retaliate. But this is an initial drone attack is minor. Iran is not, they're trying to test your defenses. They're testing, okay, we're going to test your defense and see where your weaknesses are. Meanwhile, they could easily make some moves to penetrate Israel and make things very uncomfortable for Israel. War is strategic. They're not, they know that Israel have defense systems that can knock down their drones. This is besides that point. They're going to take steps to make sure.
Taking precautions. From this location, I tell you, we've seen a number of fighter jets fly overhead. There's a huge Allied presence in the sky right now. Israeli Air Force, as well as the US, the UK, Jordanian aircraft working to take out what could be as many as 400 to 500 drones that were launched over the last couple of hours from Iran into Israel as retaliation for that Israeli airstrike on an Iranian consulate in Syria that killed a number of military officials. Iran has been telegraphing their intention to do this now for days, and the U.S. has been working with Israel for days, gaming out how to react to something like this. They do expect to be able to shoot most of these drones out of the sky, but the question is what would be able to get through and where is it going to hit? And of course, all of Israel right now watching and waiting for the answer to those questions, which looks like we'll see somewhat soon. Karen and Rob, back to you.
And they found out, as some was able to land. They actually took a cargo ship, used a helicopter, lowered down onto the ship and took it over. Well, Iran warned the United States, stay out of the fight or face the attack on your troops. If you want to join this fight, this is not the one you're going to want. Iran is prepared. Our great president of the United States of America, Joe Biden, he gave a very potent message. Let's see and hear that message that our president, not Donald Trump, Joe Biden, decided to deliver to the world.
How imminent do you think an attack on Israel is from Iran, Mr. President?
I want to get this secure information, but my expectations sooner than later.
What is your message to Iran in this moment?
Don't.
A Fox News alert, Joe Biden yesterday with that one-word warning to Iran, as the U.S. expects the Iranian regime to strike multiple targets inside Israel in the coming days. They're forecasting that. The White House remains on high alert, saying it is in constant communication with Israeli leaders over the prospect of a serious escalation in the region. Let's bring in retired U.S. Air Force General Philip Breedlove. General, thanks for being here. So how are those two things congruent, right? We know, we're being told that attack is imminent, the size and scope of which we don't know, but yet the president is saying don't. So what do we make of all that?
Well, Pete, thanks for having me back on. I think we've said don't more than once recently, and I'm not sure that that's a message that really has standing in the world to these terrorists and to Iran, the backers of the terrorists.
Okay, so if it doesn't have standing, does that mean they escalate at their, based on their calculation of what's beneficial for them? Are they even factoring in an American response, or do they think we won't do anything?
Well, I think that they fear first and foremost an Israeli response. I mean, the Hamas. Remember, Hamas starts in Iran and ends in Iran.
Now, everyone who wants to talk about an Iran threat, oh, he's threatening Iran. Iran just delivered on what exactly they said they were going to do. So they can give two damn raps shit about Joe Biden saying, don't. You gonna tell them who been attacked, don't? What is your alternative? They don't live by the standards of what this government say. They're not held hostage to the beliefs that our eminent president of the United States of America seem to believe. They don't care what you say, how you word it, where you put down, where your periods are, all that stuff, where it ends. They don't care. You know what they care about? You struck us, we gonna strike back. They said, well, we didn't do it. Bullshit. We coming. And that's all they know. 9 times out of 10, Israel probably didn't do it. But they don't like them, so it's like, F y'all anyway. We got a reason to come. We don't like y'all anyway. That's how Iran feels. So Israel is like, what we gonna do? So they went to America. Here come America to come help Israel. Why is America always in their problems? You ever wonder that? All the people that's surrounding there that can help, why you keep running to America? Why is America always coming to bail out Israel? You ever wondered that? They in cahoots. You know why? Because they got the children of Israel right here in this country, making sure we don't go back. So you got to understand, when the children of Israel is sitting here in America, and you got the people who are facilitating Israel from Romania sitting up in there saying they Israel. It's like, you're Romanian. The hell, what are you talking about? Romania is not in Israel. It's comments. They got to make it, they have to make it make sense to me. People were put in there to facilitate Israel. They're not from there. No. Of course, we were already here. We have been everywhere. Here's another thing that they've told you that was lies. The earth split. It was a big earthquake and all the dinosaurs died and they split. It's not a happen. Okay, things over time, yes, there were earthquakes, but the way they tell you the earth split is terrible. Over time, the water currents wear down and break up the lands and move the lands apart and shift them into different areas. Hawaii and Japan get closer every year. So when everything was splitting, it didn't split at the same times. When people was pilgrimaging on foot, they were going up to other areas to set up their lands and tribes so they could walk to these lands. They could walk to all these things that we're sitting here saying, oh, they couldn't do this, they couldn't do that. People have climbed mountains to get into certain areas. And they built their village and stayed there because they didn't want to be living by the laws of this land and this guy governing that, and they get exiled. They go. So they go and they take their family and they go build their own on their own land. Be like, this is mine. Take the wood, chop some trees down, build a hut. They know how to start a fire with sticks, keep warm. Some went all the way to the Midwest. So the land that they called America was already occupied. Already occupied. But what do they do? They come and they conquer and take over, and homicide, Pocahontas, they made it like a beautiful love story. That was a slaughter. Yes, there were blacks, there were Indians. They all were here. That's why the land has been named all these land states were already named by the Indians. Ohio, Iowa, Chicago, Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio. These are Indian names. Milwaukee. These are all Indian names and proverbs. They owned all these lands. They named them. So the entire Midwest is definitely Indian. All right, Cincinnati. You can go on and on. North Dakota, South Dakota, Dakota, period. Nebraska. So do I know the definition of racist? White people. That's all I need to know. End of the question. The end of story. End of story. Do I know the definition of racist? White people. Let's move forward. That's it. Now, as you can see, they're not playing games. Iran wasn't bluffing. Why would they bluff? They really not a bluffing people. Now, everyone else is going to try to keep you calm, right? Now, Israel said, we're going to respond back for them shooting these drones. Oh, they want you to do that. Iran wants you to try to come back with something. And the United States is going to try to join in with him, and y'all going to mess up and start what they want to kick off anyway. Y'all going to fall into this booby trap. And y'all doing it right during election time. Biden want to kick this off. If you seen the movie Civil War, they keep talking about, oh, that's Trump is the president in there. I'm like, that's Biden. Biden gonna try to go for a historic third term. Well, that's what they want to do anyway. People look at situations. Biden wants this attention, fighting for America, standing up against terrorists.
Unclear specifically what we're seeing and where this is, but we know that the Iron Dome and the intercepts have been at play, including assets from the United States. They have been responding and intercepting some of those projectiles. Let's bring in ABC's Chief Global Affairs Correspondent, Martha Raddatz, who is joining us now on the phone. Martha, you've been sending some emails, some reports from your sources. What do we know about these missiles and drones that Iran is sending to Israel now?
With the U.S. official I have been speaking to this evening said they expect 400 to 500 drones and missiles to be heading towards Israel. That is clearly happening right now. As you know, a wave of drones were launched several hours ago. The missiles have been launched more recently, just about 150 missiles so far, but then that swarm of drones. And the Iranians have timed this so they all go towards their target at once. They are indeed trying to overwhelm the air defenses. Another really important point here is that the U.S. is clearly involved in trying to intercept. The U.S. official told me they're trying to intercept everything they can. They're doing that from the Red Sea. They're doing that from the Mediterranean and throughout the Middle East where they do have air defenses. Others are trying to help as well. This comes after the Iranians warned the U.S. not to help, to stay out of it. Basically, according to this U.S. official, Iranians said to the U.S., if you don't involve yourselves in this, we will stay away from you. And yet tonight we are seeing that the U.S. is shooting down missiles, drones, whatever they can do to keep them away from Israel and to try to keep Israelis safe. They've also, according to this U.S. official, these drones and missiles are headed towards 3 military facilities. They said they do not think they are purposefully aiming at civilian areas, but these are not completely accurate drones or missiles, and there could certainly be, as Britt pointed out, some sort of damage from these, not only from the missiles or drones themselves that they may not be able to intercept, but from falling debris as well with.
And Martha, we know that Israel has one of the most sophisticated air defense systems in the world. We talk about the Iron Dome and then the support from the U.S. now. Is it your sense in talking to your sources that the magnitude of this attack from Iran is a surprise in any way, or is this consistent with what they were expecting?
I think it is a surprise. I think it is larger than they expected, much worse than they expected, and they are so focused on trying to get these missiles and drones down. But even if they get 85% of them down, it's bound to hit something. They're bound for some of those missiles or drones to get through to their target. If right now what we're seeing, and Britt, they're right in the middle of it, seeing these swarms of drones, these swarms of missiles that really could overwhelm the system.
Stand by for us for a moment, if you could. I want to go back to Britt Clennett because, Britt, I understand you're hearing sirens right now in Jerusalem. If you're able to hear us, can you tell us what you're seeing, what you're hearing?
At the moment, we're not. That doesn't mean that it's not happening in other parts of Jerusalem, but this does seem to be a period of eerie quiet, especially after we heard those several interceptions and, as I say, the wailing of the air raid sirens. But as far as I can see, it doesn't seem like there are any interceptions at the moment or any imminent danger.
Okay, Britt, thank you. Martha, I'd like to bring you back in here because you were talking about the calculation from the U.S. And of course, for weeks, the move has been to try to prevent an escalation across the region. What does this do to our position right now? And how does the U.S. respond militarily?
I think the U.S. will do everything possible not to respond militarily. They want to put themselves in a defensive position to defend Israel, not to go after Iran. But what they are most worried about now is how Israel responds to this, what Israel does. And proportional, how do they look at a proportional after what they have just seen? If indeed there is loss of life, I would imagine that Israel's response will be larger than if there is not. And that's one of those things that the president and his national security team are talking about tonight. They have obviously been in touch with Israel all week and the Israelis about how they would respond, trying to tamp this down. But with 400, 500 possible drones and missiles expected this evening, it's pretty hard to tell Israel what to do.
And Martha,
well, here's the thing. Yep. Now, as this war is going to kick off, thanks, Richard. Now, what's going on here is the United States needs an election. They need something to stop the Trump momentum. All of a sudden, here comes a war. Here comes a bomb going off. Boom. In Iran. Now, Iran didn't start this. They lost some of their members. They had a funeral. They had everything go down. They lost 6 people that was very high ranked, that was up there in their rankings, in their systems, in their regime. So now you know that they're going to want to respond. Iran is a very serious place. They don't let certain movies play in their country. Homosexuality does not exist in their country. If you are having homosexual feelings or you acting out on that, oh, buddy, it's not going to go well for you. You decide you want to go steal something, it's not going to go well for you. Now, they're very thorough people. Now, the Israelis said they didn't do it. And no matter if they did it or not, it happened. So they either better find out who did it or deal with the people that did it themselves, or, face Iran's wrath. Now, Iran has told the United States, you stay out of it. and nothing's going to happen to your troops. If you get involved, you're going to get it too. And they ain't playing. So I hope they understand what this details. They are not playing. Biden had to cut his vacation short and go to the White House and do some work. He didn't like that. He had to come off his vacation to deal with this.
We know that President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu have a frosty relationship. They had a conversation recently, but is there any suggestion that, when the U.S. or President Biden makes these pleas to Netanyahu and his government, that they would actually listen to them or continue to go forward with their own plans?
Well, over the several months, President Biden, of course, has been talking to Prime Minister Netanyahu, asking them to please let more humanitarian aid into Gaza, to please take more care with civilian casualties. And Prime Minister Netanyahu has basically said, this is our fight. Stay out of it, essentially. The White House keeps going back to them. They're getting stronger and stronger on that. And yet, this situation tonight is so unpredictable. We don't know how this will end. We don't know what we'll get through, if anything. We're obviously hoping nothing gets through to Israel, and all of these are shot down. But it is, just as you say, Whit, it's a very fraught relationship, and Israel is right in the middle of a huge escalation right now.
All right, Martha Raddatz for us, our Chief Global Affairs Correspondent. Thank you so much. We truly appreciate it. I want to bring in our senior White House correspondent, Selena Wang, who's been tracking all of this. Selena, we know that President Biden was supposed to be continuing his weekend in Delaware, but he went back to the White House early today to meet with his national security team. They were in the Situation Room. What are you hearing from the administration right now?
Exactly what he cut his weekend trip short, and I'm told by officials that he has been holed up in the Situation Room for hours, and they're just wrapping that meeting up with his top national security advisors. The president, though, he's making very clear tonight that America's support of Israel's defense is ironclad, despite that very frosty relationship between Netanyahu and President Biden, as you were just talking about with Martha. He is making that distinction very clear. Now, look, the White House is on high alert. They've been on high alert for days, and officials tell me that anxieties here are running very high because the U.S. is very worried about how Israel could respond to this and how this could widen this war. This is exactly what the president has been avoiding thus far. He's been very careful to calibrate and to message to all of the partners and allies to Israel not to escalate and to contain this.
Yeah, President Biden was asked this week, what's your message to Iran if they're considering an attack on Israel? His message was pretty blunt. He said, don't. That said, Selena, the White House has been pressed repeatedly about what the response would be from the U.S. We heard Martha talking about this, that the U.S., for the most part, in a supporting role here. But do you have any more information about what our involvement could be? I know that we sent new additional resources to the region. We're talking ships and manpower. What can you tell us about that?
Exactly what I mean. The U.S. was trying to prepare for this situation, though they wanted to avoid this. So they were already surging military assets to the region because a big vulnerability here is U.S. forces. So they want to protect those U.S. forces in the region. And for days now, the U.S. has been telegraphing to Iran, as you say, do not do this. Do not target U.S. forces. The U.S. has made clear that they didn't know about this Damascus strike beforehand. They weren't involved in it. Their message to Iran is don't get us pulled into this. Don't get us involved. So that is very much the message the president has been delivering. It's unclear what this relationship like with Netanyahu is going to be going forward and trying to understand what the Israeli response is going to be. Remember, not too long ago, President Biden issued his strongest criticism of Netanyahu yet and said, if you don't do more, if you don't do enough to protect civilians in Gaza, then we could change our policy towards Israel. That could mean withholding U.S. aid if Israel doesn't do enough. And officials tell me that what the president has laid out in terms of getting more humanitarian aid in, opening those border crossings, officials tell me that is really the president's baseline. And if even that doesn't get accomplished, well, then we've got a problem here.
Selena Wang for us at the White House. Thank you so much. Let's bring in Colonel Steve Ganyard, our ABC News contributor. And Steve, I just want to talk about the unprecedented nature of this attack. Iran going after Israel directly within its borders. Have we ever seen anything like this?
Well, we've never seen an attack directly by Iran on Israel. That's unprecedented. But the numbers here are what's so amazing, Rit. 400 to 500 incoming drones and missiles. That's unprecedented for any air defense system. Now, we know that the Israelis have the most sophisticated and capable integrated air and missile defense capability. But 400 to 500 means that it probably is almost inevitable that some are going to get through. It's interesting to look at the kinds of videos that we see Brit bringing from Jerusalem. We're talking about the Iron Dome, and everybody's familiar with the Iron Dome and what that does against some of the short-range missiles coming out of Gaza. But the Israelis have a layered defense. So it's Iron Dome at the lower altitudes. Then there's another system called David Sling, which is the medium altitudes. And then for very high ballistic missile intercepts, there's the Arrow 2 missile. And so a lot of what we seem to be seeing here is more of the David Sling. It's less Iron Dome. So David Sling, a bit of a newer system, but it does reach up higher, and it does seem to be intercepting these incoming Iranian attacks at a higher altitude.
So, Steve, let me ask you more about that, because, you know, beyond the drones, and we're talking about potentially hundreds from Iran tonight, we also know that they have an elaborate ballistic missile system. Talk to us about the difference and the type of damage that these missiles could do. This is very different than like the rockets that we typically see being shot from like Gaza or from Hezbollah into Israel.
Right. There's still conflicting reports, Whit, about whether the Iranians actually have launched ballistic missiles. But that's what that Arrow 2 system is. It's a very high altitude ballistic missile interceptor. So it's not easy to intercept ballistic missiles, but the Arrow 2 has proven quite capable. So that's the real concern here, because if Iran starts launching these long-range ballistic missiles, that is going to provoke Israel in a way to make sure that its response is going to be overwhelming. So what we see tonight with 400 to 500 missiles and drones coming inbound, I think that the Iranians have bought themselves a retaliatory strike that will be much more from the Israelis than they provided tonight.
And what could an Israeli retaliatory strike look like?
Well, Israel has a lot more capability to project power than Iran does. So they have a very capable Air Force. They have F-35 stealth fighters, very capable F-15s. They have cruise missiles that can be launched from submarines and from ships. So the air power, the capability of the Israeli Air Force is far beyond anything that the Iranians have. And the Israeli Air Force can own the airspace over Iran. So between that and the ships at sea, the Israelis have a lot of options in how they retaliate.
Steve, another thing that has surprised a lot of people in watching this play out tonight, Jerusalem, not typically a place where you would see, you know, rockets or projectiles shot to. Obviously a mixed population. You have Jews, you have Muslims, and these holy sites. And you talked about the potential for something going wrong, even if they weren't targeting a place like Jerusalem. If one of these projectiles or, you know, a rocket dropped and injured civilians, how significant would something like that be?
Yeah, well, apparently the Iranians would claim that they're only going after military sites. There is a significant missile base that is very close to Jerusalem. So that may be what Brit is seeing and hearing. If they do go after military bases, then obviously the Israelis have put quite a bit of their air defenses around those military bases. But it's one of these things where the more that comes in, it's more of a problem to solve, and it makes it much more difficult for the Iron Dome and the David Sling and the Arrow to figure out what's incoming and a danger and what's not, with this idea that if you hit them, where does the debris go? Does it hurt people on the ground?
And Steve, let's talk about the U.S. here. We know that we're shooting down some of these projectiles, but what's the likelihood this draws us deeper into a regional conflict now?
This is the real concern, because we know that the Iranians earlier in the week were very clear that if the U.S. helped Israel defend against the attack that Iran said was coming, that U.S. forces in the region would become fair game. So we have forces in Iraq, we have forces in Jordan, we have forces in the Red Sea. So all of a sudden, after weeks of the Iranian surrogates not coming after U.S. forces in the region, we now know that these forces are now fair game and open to attack by Iran. So there's a real danger here that if Iran miscalculates and goes after U.S. forces, and it's clear that Iran was the instigator, then that could very easily draw the U.S. into a wider Middle East war.
That's true.
And that's going to be hell on wheels. You have to understand something, people. They're not bluffing. I would start stocking up on canned goods and medical supplies. Water also. Bottled water, all these things are going to be resources you're going to need. Well, a lot of people don't know how to generate fairly a direction where they can be successful. Of course, Kiwan, this is always going to be there. Israel will always be at war until the original children of Israel, of the real citizens, come home. It will always be at war. The real citizens of Israel return. And until that happens, Israel will always be at war. We can leverage and profit to survive for our family's legacy. Learn financial literacy. That's true. This is survival. That's it. Combat and yep. That's why I said if you on the Patreon, this is what we're covering. This is what we're gonna be bringing to you. We're gonna be teaching survival this week. Learn how to survive in these adverse situations. It's all needed. Well, you got to understand that there's a lot of activity that's being added to the situation to basically heighten it. Well, when other people start paying attention to what's at stake or what the main situations are, they'll start to figure it out for themselves. They'll say, oh, okay, I get it now. People don't want to hear what you think about something. They want to hear what you know that can keep people alive, that can keep people safe. Believe me, if it starts hitting the fan, believe me, nobody gonna be thinking about your black ass. I'm gonna tell you that right now. They ain't gonna be thinking about you. They gonna be thinking about their survival, not yours. So you gotta put that in perspective. They absolutely don't care.
Truly been a major concern for months since that October 7th attack. Steve Ganyard for us, thank you so much. Let's bring in ABC's senior Pentagon reporter, Louis Martinez. Louis, I know that you've got a lot of sources on this and you've been confirming much of this information throughout the evening. What more are you learning tonight? And have we heard any update on whether any of these projectiles from Iran have actually landed and done any damage in Israel?
It's unclear exactly if from U.S. sources, if officially yet, whether something has actually landed inside Israel. What we are hearing from U.S. officials is that United States forces in the region are shooting down whatever drones or missiles may be headed towards Israel if they're capable. You spoke earlier about exactly about additional assets being sent into the region. We are aware that 2 U.S. Navy destroyers are in the region, but I think that's more for long distance intercepts. But we do know that the United States does have in both Iraq and Jordan some air defense systems. And it appears that at least some of those air defense systems were boosted in advance of this Iranian retaliation. And so therefore, one can assume that those missile systems have been used now to bring down at least some of these Iranian drones and missiles that have been headed towards Israel.
And Louis, we know that the U.S. added additional assets into the region. Can you talk more about that? And are we talking about potentially, like boots on the ground, not necessarily on the ground, but on battleships and whatnot throughout the region?
That's right. Not inside Israel proper. We are talking outside of Israel. That's where U.S. forces are located. We know that there are 2,500 U.S. forces inside Iraq, that there's about 900 that are inside of Syria. But there is also a sizable component inside of Jordan. And so those locations do have air defense systems already. So it's very likely that these air defense systems were boosted in advance of this retaliatory strike. In fact, we were told that the U.S. was sending more personnel to the ground there in the region, as well as air assets. So that means aviation aircraft, and also naval. And that's those 2 destroyers that we're talking about that are located in the Eastern Mediterranean. And what they do is they have the capability of shooting down both long distance incoming missiles and shorter range missiles. But I think as we're talking about U.S. forces shooting down these drones and missiles on their way to Israel, I think one can assume it's those shorter distance systems that the United States employs when it tries to shoot down anything that's incoming towards their bases.
And Louis, can I pick up on something that Steve mentioned there? I know we got to confirm that there were drones and missiles, but we were talking about the ballistic missile system that Iran has. Do we have any confirmation that they've launched any of those yet towards Israel?
Excuse me, would you mind taking a picture of us?
Oh, no problem.
Thanks.
Ooh, yes, problem.
You need Verizon. Get the new iPhone 15.
Once he said iPhone, it was all over.
Speaking to it, but again, this is a developing situation, and one of the things that we've been told, as per Martha Raditz's reporting, is that overall the U.S. is anticipating somewhere between 400 to 500 drones and missiles being launched at Israel. That means this is going to take some time. So potentially some of those longer range, if faster moving ballistic missiles could be used. But no, I don't have anything yet from any officials I'm talking to right now. If anything, we're talking about the cruise missiles that have been launched. And we should point out that even though it is a missile, cruise missiles do take some time to get to their targets as well. They are not as fast moving as ballistic missiles, which take a much faster, shorter time to get to a location because they go up higher in the air and then they strike at their targets.
Louis Martinez.
That's why I told you they haven't shot those yet. See, shooting it from your country, those drone missiles they have to travel 700 miles. They're 700 miles away from each other. So they got to travel over 700 miles. So you got plenty of time to get there. They travel slower and they have to cover 700 miles, which takes some time for them to get there. A ballistic missile can cover that real fast. 700 miles is not a lot of time to get that ballistic missile. So they're going to go after their defense systems and they're going to keep overwhelming them with the drones. They could rain down drones all night and drain their system out because they know some are going to get through. Well, it's all about how you roll. Oh, key one, let it be known. Well, I want to see all of y'all on the Patreon, on the Casino for Life Patreon. So I'm finna go update the Patreon right now. Shouts out to Kwame Brown Bus Life. Welcome to HDI TV. All y'all in the chat, thank y'all for showing up. Everybody with super chat, hit the like button and kept this video floating. Appreciate y'all, and we'll give you more information when something happens. I'm out.